Hello and welcome. I am so pumped for this episode. And it's funny because after being off social media for almost 4 months, I went back on and I was like, okay, who do you guys want on the podcast? And everyone's like, get her on. And I'm like, all right, cool. Because I've wanted to have this conversation too. So just more confirmation. So I've got Bakara here with me from Everyday Magic, and it's just nice to have a fellow witch sister with me, and we get to talk about all the things with you that I feel like a lot of people are not talking about enough in our community. But I also feel like this is part of the growing pains of the community. I don't know if you're feeling this too, because I think for a long time, the world of modern mysticism was just this shiny object for a long time. And it's sounded cool and it looked like this, and then people realize when you start working with these tools, you're gonna get shit's gonna shake up, and it's not just this facade, and it's not this trendy thing. This is spiritual. These are spiritual tools and a practice that has been going on. This isn't new. This is deep ancestral knowing. And I know for me, I come from a lineage of witches. I think that's part of the reason why my soul also chose the name Sabrina in this lifetime. Just kind of coming into this understanding that for us to implement the golden era, for us to actualize this heaven on earth reality, we have to clear through generational shit. We have to clear through ancestral shit. There's so many layers that we as these modern mystics, these what I like to call these medicine mystics, we are the ones that are really tapping into the truth of who we are. We are remembering at the core that we are all spiritual beings having this human experience. So I would just love to dive in and just kind of hear your story of how you really started to embark into this journey of, what has become your brand, your company, and your medicine that you are living and sharing out there.
Yes, let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready to just go right off the deep end where you started this, which is perfect, because I think that you're right. I think that when people approach magic, and I say this because this is how I approach magic. I approach magic not fully expecting it to work. I only had the faith that I had already had, which was such a smaller container. And so I went to magic thinking, I don't know what I was thinking. I think I sensed that it would heal me, but I didn't realize that magic was the umbrella for psychology, for physics, for brain chemistry, for trauma. I was doing all of this self-work, and I guess the faith that I had to do it was grounded in magic, but a lot of the work of healing doesn't feel like what I thought magic was going to feel like when I started. So it evolved with me. And I think that magic is alive and well, and it'll trick you. It'll be like crystals and healing and la la la. And you're like, cool. And then all of a sudden you're plucked up out of your life doing all this shit that you never thought you would be doing. And I mean, it's so much harder than I thought it was going to be, but I realized that I have no integrity as a healer if I don't step into healing myself with this, in what that asks.
And we have to heal ourselves first, I think people get so much of the social media, glitz and glam of how pretty this looks. And, how everyone wants to be this coach and this mentor, and they want to help. I mean, this is definitely a time of deep healing, what we're experiencing. With that comes the responsibility, though, of the power of these tools and these practices. And, I don't know if this is part of the evolutionary journey of being kind of underground to slowly becoming mainstream in a way, but there are growing pains to this practice, and there are growing pains to showing up and, allowing ourselves to immerse ourselves properly into this work.
I think so. I mean, I think that there's growing pains for us personally. I think that there's growing pains for us as a community. And I see it kind of, I believe that how we handle the growing process of this community is directly connected to how much mercy we're willing to show people who made the same mistakes that we did at the beginning, who didn't know, who kind of overstepped or underestimated. I think that there's such a trend in any community with the old, scoffing at the young. And I think that, if we can create a bridge and kind of see this all as one intention, from the Urban Outfitters bullshit to the velvet wearing Renaissance fair attending people. I mean, it's all the same. If we really get into it, it's all the same. Christianity, Judaism, like Islam, like it really is all one similar intention. But I'm interested in what happens if we keep this community together rather than tearing it apart by the holier than thou bullshit that you see in every spiritual community,
Mm-hmm, definitely. Yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with, like I was saying, like you were sharing, I was watching this live before we came on, that you were talking about labradorite, which is that's my OG stone for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And discernment, really having discernment in the world of modern mysticism, because this isn't going anywhere. Like this practice isn't going anywhere. If anything, it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to bring more interest. And I feel like now that we're in this 7-year cycle post 2012, and our consciousness has shifts every 7 years, the first wave of people that have been like really anchoring in this golden era and bringing in this modern mysticism and really embodying the practices, like, we're tired. We're tired. We've been doing the work for years, right? You laugh because it's true. We're all fucking tired. And but with that comes the teachings, and we have to teach through our own experience to these, the next wave of these mystics that are kind of coming in, that are just getting curious, people who have just bought their first tarot deck, or people who are just learning about the power of crystals. Like, these are growing pains as a collective we're going through, and the education and how to have real conversation about the power of this medicine.
I do think that the people that kind of woke up in the 2012, that cycle, probably had the oldest child syndrome, right? Like I see so much of this being so much easier for people who are kind of starting now. But I also I feel so much a small part of a larger whole, that I don't lament the work that I had to do before, other people were doing it, or the growing pains that I ran into. I so badly just want to see the success of this community for once, because it's never gone anywhere. Like, witchcraft, mysticism is that's the reason that Christianity exists. It's It's been the foundation of everything, but it's been subjugated and marginalized and vilified for so long, that for it to actually come up now in a way that sticks, it's gonna have to be modern. It's gonna have to be, it's facilitated by Instagram, and it's, commodified to a certain extent, and it's digestible, and you can buy books on it from Amazon. And it's how does magic exist in the modern world? And I don't think that's our question, to figure out how to make it exist in the modern world, because it's always existed. But it's how does it exist in the modern world, and how do we support that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also with that, it's also having that, the conversations that we need to have, and to be able to have this, share experience, because not everyone can, we learn through experience. And I think this is also bringing up the history of storytelling,
Yeah.
and we're going back into that history of storytelling, and we're seeing more and more people sharing their inner child trauma. We're seeing more and more people sharing what it is that we are, we're clearing out generational trauma right now.
Yeah. I mean, when I first got my deck, I started reading tarot professionally like 2 months after I got my first tarot deck. And it was this like terrifying process of feeling like I needed to step into the role of guide or teacher or mentor before I ever had the opportunity to be a student. And I think that you see that a lot in this community. So it's how do you, like, I had this ability to read people's cards, but that was all I had. I had no boundaries. I had no container. I had no way to go around. I had no way, and so what I did was I kind of answered the calling from a place of urgency and ego of like, I need to do this now because people want it now. And I had to learn in reverse all of the things that I didn't know about boundaries, about grounding, about energetic protection, about cancellation policies, just everything like kind of along the way. So I think that I need to trust other people enough because I've revenge porn watched like people like talking about spirituality and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is bullshit. But it's like, I need to trust people enough to know that they can feel what is real and what isn't. Like when I was giving readings, like I could do a reading and I was a complete hot mess. And the people that found me for that work were the people that were perfect for the messages that they were going to get from me as a channel at that time. And so I feel like especially we're reaching this kind of bubble with it because there's no regulation on what makes a healer. There's no regulation on what makes a shaman. There's no way to check it. Like, and so we have to go back to a system of depending heavily upon our own integrity of being able to, and being able to answer for that. Like, it's not just like, oh, like I was called to it. It's like, we have to be willing to show, not like for a dick measuring contest, but we need to be able to show who we are to other people so they know what our work is.
Yeah. And I think that's why there's also the wave of like vulnerability. And there's that wave of, like, I see you and that storytelling. I think that's a huge part of why the storytelling is kind of coming through, is because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and we allow ourselves to share from our experience, that's where it's like, oh, that person sees me. And all we need is that one person to be like, wow, someone who gets it. That's like the permission slip. That's like that we feel more comfortable to take that leap or to express or to share. Because if someone else is doing it, like, I can do it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that being willing to be vulnerable is probably the answer to every problem that I've ever had. But I think right now because the desire to be a healer is such a specific one. It's not the desire to be a rock star or an actor or, so it doesn't mean that you don't have your own, fucked up reasons for being drawn to that. It doesn't mean the ego doesn't participate in that decision, but there's something fundamentally right about people waking up to their desire to help other people. We've created a whole language of like healership around that, but some would argue that that is our basic responsibility as a human being to
support each other and to help one another. We're all here to help walk each other home.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, I totally believe that.
Yeah. And I feel like now that we're creeping up closer and closer to 2020, and this decade has been quite the challenge. I think that's been a decade of deep self-discovery as a collective and a decade of deep awakening. I mean, we did have the shift of the Mayan calendar, 2012, all these things. And I feel like we're getting the residual like debris out, at least like our community is waking up more and more. But when we look at the grander scheme of the collective, it's like, what is going on, But it's a very interesting time that we all chose to incarnate.
I have to believe, because I do feel this community waking up more and more. but I also believe that if something is true, it's true all of the time. So even though there's such a shit show, when you look at it on a bigger scale, I mean, 2020
it's there.
Yeah, like throw this whole decade away and let's get a new one. But like 2020 is like, I mean, this was the last of the debris coming up. Trump getting elected for president was like a manifestation of like the toxicity that's getting squeezed out of our collective psyche. And it needs to, I mean, any storyteller knows that there's always some fuck shit plot twist right before the happy ending that like spikes all of our hearts a little and tests us one last time. And maybe I'm so stupid and the world ends in 10 years and this optimism is completely unfounded, but I just don't think that. I do think that like we all have needed to go through this messy, ugly process of seeing who we are. And this decade showed that to us, like in light and in shadow. Like there can't be something horribly diseased and wrong with the world without there being something horribly diseased and wrong in ourselves. And like, so that's
what you just said too is something that we've had to also cut through and really process is the idea of light and shadow. Like we can't just be light workers. There is great growth in the shadow. And if you're spiritual bypassing in the community is not sustainable. And you're seeing more and more healers and teachers and mystics and witches calling this shit out. Because we have to have this in our awareness and in our like psyche, like, hey, there's real beauty in the shadow too, because that is the growing pains. There is real beauty in having the truth that we have this balance.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like we all know now, it's kind of almost universally accepted that light produces shadow. So everyone has a shadow. So if I see someone who isn't acknowledging it, it just means that they're not taking responsibility for half of their energy. And that makes for very scary people in my experience. Like if I can't see where someone keeps their shadow, they're usually the ones who end up doing something unexpectedly horrific out of nowhere. And it's like, that's fine. Like I can understand what, I can understand what happens when the shadow is suppressed because we've all played that game with ourselves. But the game that we can't play anymore is pretending that someone just doesn't have one. That's fucking crazy. Like what? Do you exist? Are you physically matter?
And I think that's with like the world of social media where everyone always shows their best foot, and like, but they don't show that the truth of, the journey that it takes to become fully embodied.
Totally. And I think that social media has become so fake to the point where it's almost had the desired effect from the opposite approach. It's like, we know that everyone's faking it on social media because we're faking it on social media. We know that everyone is miserable and suffering because we're miserable and suffering. And it's like, I can look at my Instagram profile and you would completely not know the days where I was suicidal, the days where I was in the fucking gutter, the days where I was in my ego. It's like, no, and it's like, I'll talk about it to a certain extent, like in community and storytelling for the sake of processing it. But like, it stands to reason that like we're understanding the truth, not from what other people are confessing or admitting, but from what we know about ourselves,
Definitely. So what would you say has been some of the tools that you have really credited and really have a deep appreciation for that has helped you transmute and assimilate those moments to become fully embodied, to be more compassionate to yourself in your journey?
I mean, I think that I think recently I identified that the voice in my head that punishes and polices me is the same voice as my father. And I remember how I felt as a little girl in constant fear of being in trouble, in constant fear of falling short, in constant fear of being punished. And I realized like how much I hated it, but that I never stopped. Like I just became both my dad and my inner child. And so it kind of felt like, if I know that people don't respond that way to being spoken to that way, then I was the last one to know. It's like, why don't I try that with me? Why don't I give, and I think seeing, being around people and paying attention enough to see that even the people who have the things I thought I wanted aren't at the place. It's this game that we all play with ourselves of putting the carrot in front of us and just walking until we're fucking dead. And like, you know, the tarot, the archetypes of the tarot have helped me understand that through seeing people as a principle rather than a personality. I think crystals have helped me see that just from seeing like what magic the earth does completely alone in a dark cave in a place where nothing can survive, and like the magic that grows in those toxic, caustic environments. Like, I mean, it's so, I hate myself for saying this, but I think the more and more I realize that everything is one, that we're all the same, the easier it becomes to show myself a little bit of mercy.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're always our toughest critic.
Yes, totally. And I could be like 70% nicer to myself and still be my toughest critic, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a Gemini, so it's like I've got those two voices in my head.
Lord have mercy. I'm a Scorpio, so I'm the other one. We're the two fuckers of the zodiac. Sorry.
Chose this. Fuck me right now. But we chose these. I feel like
I know I did
because there's something like there's a hidden gem there, you know.
That's
and
true.
To me, that Gemini is the diamond. You know, it is the one that is like with that pressure comes something powerful.
Totally. And with Scorpio, like you dig, like you get into the depths and you dig, but there's consequences. Like if you're an asshole who has the ability to dig really deep, if you're an asshole who has the ability to like compound pressure, then you'll just be a really extra asshole. Like I feel like it's important for Scorpios and Geminis to stay woke.
And I just know that when the moon is in Scorpio, fuck me, right? Like I can't like, don't talk to me. Like that will not be the day that I am scheduling things. Like that is my depth of my soul day.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And that's the other thing too. It's like, as you learn who you are and you learn how you communicate and how you work with the esoteric world, mm-hmm. It can become easier and there can be more grace, and it takes growing pains. It takes experience, but then you have that understanding of who you are where you can create these boundaries for yourself, for your own sanity.
I completely agree. And I think it's also just paying attention. Like how many decades of being alive did it take me to realize that I don't feel good in January? Like January is not a good month for me. And it's like, you know, like I can tell now, like the new moon, I need less sleep and food. And on the full moon, I need more. And it's like, there's ways of having these things not be a personal catastrophe if you are aligned. But if you're not, I mean, every time, like the wave of like seasonal depression would just like hit me like the apocalypse every single year. Like, okay.
Yeah.
It took 27 years to be like, that's it.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey. I know for me, like the summer months are really challenging. I live in the desert, so it's like 118 degrees. Like I can't fucking function like that, you know? Like,
where are you now?
I'm in Joshua Tree.
Oh my God, I need to come over. We'll talk about
that. Come. The house is open. But yeah, I mean but that's the other thing that I think, especially if you are in the world of entrepreneurship, and you are this entrepreneur, you have to, and especially an entrepreneur in the world of modern mysticism, you have to really, there's another layer that you have to become aware to of navigating through than some people who may not have that awareness can navigate through as a business owner. But it's hilarious. I have a family friend that's an investor, and he is fully aware of Mercury retrograde, you know, and he was like, you know, he's like, that shit is real. He was like, I'm not signing any contracts, you know, and it's like, it's becoming there, you know, there's more talks about it and there's more education about it. I mean, granted, we live in this technological world now, and it's just, you know, this evolution that we're having, because as we said, it's not going anywhere. So now that you know it's here, it's like you opened Pandora's box. Now how are you going to run with it?
Absolutely. And I think like my prayer, I mean, first of all, being a healer and an entrepreneur, trying to apply healing to capitalism is a weird thing that's like never like it. I feel like the decisions that I've needed to make as the owner of Everyday Magic and in my mind, like as a healer, as a reader, it's almost playing like not a devil's advocate, but it's fuck, I don't even know what I want to say about it. That will show you what kind of person you are really quickly, how you navigate entrepreneurship and healership, because entrepreneurship is a very hungry, very urgent, very ambition-driven endeavor to get what is yours. And healing is it's almost completely opposite. It's like you have the two poles of feminine and masculine, and so it's not so much choosing one so much as figuring out.
It's conscious capitalism.
Yes.
It's conscious capitalism. And I mean, I look forward to the day where there's more, people are tapping more into financial abundance lately in these worlds of teaching about manifestation and money and all these things. Great. With that money, I mean, you can, if you want the material things, great. But with that money, how are you going to make a big difference in the world more than just filling up that closet or the house or whatever? Like with that energy, what are you going to do to implement great change?
And it's so funny to me that healers are so wrestling with this idea of like, do I deserve like money? Do I deserve to be abundant because of the work I do? And it's like, who's not asking that question? The wolves of Wall Street, Donald fucking Trump, like the finance dudes, and so there comes this question where it's like, what shame have we internalized around abundance that like we're actually blocking ourselves from getting it? There's a step of like, I want to make sure that it comes in integrity, but there's so many. I think that if we assume that money is dirty inherently, then it will continue to be challenging to have a clean relationship with it. But It's hard not to, because everywhere you look, it's dirty.
And I think that's why we need to focus on having healthier conversations like this about it, and focusing on how money can do great things in the world too.
Yes.
And how money like helps us pay for our self-care, because we're living in times where, back when healers were taken care of by the community.
Yes.
And that was it. Like the shamans were taken care of, the community would come to them, and it was an energetic exchange, which is also what I feel like we as a collective of healers are clearing through that belief as well.
Yes, totally.
That poverty consciousness and all of that. I mean, and it's heavy. It's dense.
Absolutely. Because I don't even think I think that if someone said you won't get paid, but you will be taken care of by the community. Like, here's a place to live, here's food, here's all this. I'd be like, oh, that sounds kind of better, but it's not the option. Like the way that the community supports your healing now is to give you money. Like that's what it looks like. I mean, unless we're living in some, other world, other
utopian world
or dimension where that a different. I still live there in my mind. I'm like, I can still see it when I think about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm looking forward to continuing to be an observer and people watch how the collective is reacting, or how they are answering the call, or with new celebrityship because of social media, what are they going to use with that power? I mean, I don't know. I'm just coming back onto social media after almost 4 months off, and it was so liberating to be with myself and to not be bombarded with everything else. And there also has to be that discernment and boundaries of how much do I, of still taking those social media detoxes. And
yes.
I'm a firm believer in social media sabbaticals, because we have to, we're just bombarded. Our third eye is just bombarded with all this information, the scrolling. We have so much information in our brains and in our heads now, and it's just like, we need more of that invitation of that self-care, of that spiritual hygiene, of that like connection with nature. You know, we love talking about crystals and we love talking about these essential oils and all these other things, but how often are you actually spending time in nature versus behind the computer? How often are you like being in community in person rather than always online as well?
Totally. I mean, we've definitely reached the point where we like, you know, we'll go to the woods if I can take like a cute photo and like a story of it and like let everyone know that I went to the woods. Like we've kind of robbed ourselves of the ability to have an authentic experience via the desire to be constantly connected. And the desire to be constantly connected is a human desire, but the need to be grounded in nature is not, it's a need. It surpasses desire. And I think we've reached a point collectively where the ego is kind of superseded the human needs, because everywhere I look on social media, like I see people, it is kind of the rat race energy of it. And you see people, you know, cutting corners, and you see people taking advantage. And I think the internal struggle that I've felt is like, don't do that no matter what. Like, just don't ever, like, you know, like you can look and you can be triggered and you can feel judgmental about it, but don't think, I've never allowed myself to make decisions from a place of thinking that will actually work, whether it's buying followers or like bringing something into the store that I don't know anything about, or speaking on a topic that I have no business talking about. I've always just kind of veered on the side of sticking with what I know.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's a constant, like we're constantly reevaluating how this thing works because it's constantly evolving in a way too. And I think we get tired of things easily, and, you know, like the thing, as someone who has their degree in marketing, like everything I learned, I graduated from school 8 years ago. Everything I learned then, like Facebook was the hot thing, like shit's evolving. Like we have to keep up with the times, but more than that, we have to honor our energy too. Yes. And to connect with like at the core of who we are as this evolves, who we are at the core. What are we doing? What is our intention? And I think that's the biggest thing. Is the intention just to have that number on that platform, or is the intention to really help people come home to themselves? Is that intention?
And I think that what I have found, because it can get so complicated because there's so many aspects of it, but I'm reminded of something that my friend said to me in the last ceremony we were in together, which is that anything that's not built out of love, like, will last. Like, it's only things that are built out of love that will stay. And like Everyday Magic was largely conceived out of love. I've made decisions inside of Everyday Magic that weren't love-based, and they didn't work. Like, maybe they worked for a second, maybe it like got big for a moment, but like it didn't stay.
Shiny object.
Exactly. The part of Everyday Magic that has remained sustainable are the parts of it that are connected directly to my heart. And so there is some kind of energetic regulation that I've noticed for myself personally, because people don't want to be lied to. And like if you're sitting, like, you know, like we all have the decision of what we give our attention to, of what accounts we look at, of who's of the podcast that we listen to, of the people that we decide. And that's kind of the great thing about social media. It's like you can pick, like you curate your own feed. I mean, aside from like, you know, Russia and the ads, but like insofar as the accounts you follow. So I think that we're all growing up inside of this community. Even the most like fake egoic people that are spouting healing language are clearly drawn to it for some reason. And like, all I can hope is that, I mean, is that it regulates itself. Like either they grow up or like they evolve and they, you know, come to it from a love ethic, or they'll just be pruned out on their own.
Yeah. And it's also part of what's also shifting with all of this is understanding that this new time is more about collaboration versus competition.
Totally. And like, I feel that I'm like becoming friends with like these women who also like sell crystals, and they're these women own like crystal accounts, and they like, and I noticed like they started like shouting me out on like their stories and stuff. And I'm like, we are direct competitors, like from a strictly capitalism perspective, we are direct competitors. And yet there is this true, like one of them drove from like Virginia to come to Everyday Magic when we like had just gotten like more crystals in from a gems show. And I think it was also, they're both older than me. And so I think it's also like the women around me who were teaching me of like, these are your sisters. Like, this is not your competition. Because I don't think I came in knowing that, honestly.
Well, I mean, I think of like, you're in the Moonchild Tarot deck like I am, you know, like you're in is like the Page of Wands, like, and you have your own deck, and, you know, you're in Danielle's deck, and you have your own, like, that's support right there.
I know. And I'm starting to, so that's been a revelation for me. That's been like a very like profound, like stripping away of like this feeling that I've had since I was a little girl of like, I'm not going to get my share. I'm not going to get what's mine. And I think a lot of people never heal their inner child, and they go into business as an unhealed inner child, still trying to take everything that they didn't get. Like, so I've been mothered, like I've had my mother wound healed like through business, and it's changed me both as a woman and as a businesswoman. So that's a completely unexpected like benefit of having a magical business, is magic happens inside of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I know with me, like when I have my mentor clients, you know, like my 3-month mentorship program, that first month I call it the Solistic Journey, where you're going through the medicine wheel, where you have to heal the inner child. You have to connect with the lineage. You have to balance this masculine and feminine energy if you want success. Like, I think that's another thing. It's like, we all see on social media, like, oh, this looks easy. Like, they're doing it, I can do it. Like, it's a multifaceted, layered experience to build a business.
Yes.
In today's day and age.
When anyone can do it, because that's what I thought when I started, because I had no budget for like advertising or anything. So it was just Instagram. And I'm like, Instagram is my one shot to get people to give a fuck about this business. And like, the best strategy I could think of was to just be as much myself and as honest as I could be about like, you know, it's not just like, here's Everyday Magic, a lifestyle brand. It's like, here's Everyday Magic, and here's me, this person, and he was like trying to open it, and here's the story of how this happened. So I feel like the story of it and being willing to show myself and my process have been just as much of a part of the success as the business itself, if not more.
And you can't be in that space of vulnerability, circling back around. You can't be in that space of vulnerability if you haven't been able to honor that vulnerability within yourself first.
Totally. And with inner children, like, it's like, I didn't realize, I think until very recently, that like everyone's inner children, like we're just a bunch of like grown up bodies, like, because our parents' generation didn't do inner child healing ever. I mean, unless they were special, and like, but like as a collective, there wasn't this conversation being had about inner child healing. Their parents didn't have inner child healing. There was kind of this like individualistic, like suck it up and do it all yourself.
Big boys don't cry.
Totally. Yeah. So I see my dad now, and it's like, as an adult and as a father, I'm horrified, but seeing him as like a 13-year-old, like it makes literally perfect sense. So we can stay that way our whole life. Like, we really need to make conscious decisions to grow ourselves up and to handle our inner child, or it will never happen on its own.
That brings more compassion to our parents as well.
We must.
And that's the thing that I think about, like my mom's first generation American. So she was essentially like an Italian living in America, where she didn't learn English until she went to school. So there's also this level of patience that we have to give to the generation before us, as, you know, like they love to talk shit about millennials, but that's just their own projection.
Totally. I mean, I talk shit about the next generation for having like, you know, mindfulness in kindergarten, because I'm so fucking jealous of them. Like, you know, the coping skills that they're going to be raised having, like they're just bitter. Like, it's just a bitterness. And like we run the risk of becoming bitter too if we don't try for compassion. Like I think about your mom, like I remember being that age and feeling so other. Imagine how other you feel if you can't speak the language. It's like they gave us a better story, even though they did it imperfectly, and we're going to do it better than they did. The only reason we're going to do it better than they did is because of what they did to make it better for us.
Mm-hmm. And to give them just like more compassion and to be with that ease and grace, just like, you know, and it's like where we can mother them in a way, like their inner child. And there's so much of this quantum healing that's happening right now around about children, like inner child work and all these things, just because I also feel like that's why so much of our generation's been patient on having children, if at all, is because we're not having children yet until, you know, like we feel either financially strong enough, like energetically strong enough, emotionally strong enough, when all the generations before would be like, oh, this is the sheep routine.
Totally. I mean, now it's like we won't do it until the cycle is broken. I feel like every like client I have that talks about becoming a mother, or even that is already a mother, like the collective focus of the maternal right now is like, how do I break the cycle? Whether you have a kid or you're thinking about having a kid or you're deciding not to have a kid, deciding not to have a kid is just as much of a maternal choice as deciding to have a kid. Like
Totally.
it comes from impulse. And so there's a collective responsibility being taken by the maternal right now to break the cycle that I've never
I feel like for me, that was what literally truly embarked my spiritual journey. Like I had a difficult LSD trip. I was with my twin and I was like, I need to do me right now. Like I need to heal my family. And that to me was healing the generational trauma and the pain and the conditioning. Just so that like, I literally posted on Instagram today. We are cutting through the trauma of the generations before us right now. And we need to be gentle with ourselves along that way as well.
Well, epigenetics, I think, is proven that trauma is passed down in your cells at least 3 generations, but there's studies that are showing that it goes up to 12 generations that you inherit your trauma, just like you inherit your eye color and your hair color. Like it's so.
Well, that's why I love Kundalini yoga, because when we do that practice, we're clearing 7 generations behind us and 7 generations before us.
Wow.
And that's why, like, that practice, I've been a teacher and a practitioner for 5 years. What makes me different compared to those other Kundalini teachers is that I also infuse psychedelics. And I feel like this is like, there's no accident why there is like this psychedelic renaissance right now as well.
Totally. I so agree with that. It's like, they want to heal your brain. Let them. They will
speaking. The plants are speaking. And I mean, for me, I credit so much of my healing, of course, to myself doing the work, but like psychedelics, psilocybin, like, you know, and every time I'm on other people's podcasts, everyone's always like, I want to know more about your psychedelic journeys. And I do feel that as a psychedelic practitioner, like, this is the plants are coming up right now. There is this awareness coming up. There's no accident why, you know, psilocybin is stage 1 right now of trials for depression.
I mean, the writing is on the wall. It's just a matter of time now. I mean, I think that, the most profound shifts that I've ever experienced as a human being have been the times where I've sat in shamanic ceremony with ayahuasca. So that's like, I mean, it's like, I mean, you're in it, and it's such a gift from the earth that you can literally pull a vine and cook it and drink it, and it will give you this experience. I mean, it's hard to argue with nature, isn't it? Like, it's like they just made it this way.
And the fact right now that the Amazon's on fire and no one's talking about it is just like, the plans are like, wake the fuck up, collective, wake the fuck up, you know? And
no, I feel them. I felt the same way hearing about that fire that I did about the Notre Dame fire. Honestly,
me too.
I'm like,
I was having dreams. I was having dreams about France, like, and I was talking about Notre Dame the week before, and then it's on fire, like Mary Magdalene, like I just felt Mary Magdalene, the rise of the divine feminine through that whole fire. We have to become aware. And like you said, the writing's on the wall. Like spirit speaks to those who listen. And we have to listen, which means we need to quiet ourselves, which means we need to instill more meditation, which means we need to instill more connection where we're storytelling and hearing each other's stories. Listening to what's going on and doing something about it.
I mean, I think I just watched the documentary that came out on Netflix about Woodstock because it was just the 50-year anniversary of Woodstock. And I know that Woodstock was a mess for so many reasons, but I was genuinely shocked watching this, seeing how when a container was created for 3 days of peace, community, support, like people walked in to that space in community, in peace, in support. There wasn't any violence. Like people should have starved and they didn't because food was being sent by the community. And I think that we've gone so far away from offering anyone any kind of sense of safety because we ourselves feel so unsafe that we're kind of just looking around being like, who is going to make the first move to diffuse the energetic bomb that is this world? Because everyone is ready to crucify everyone else. Everyone's ready to take from everyone else. Like everyone feels so mad and so slighted and so betrayed, like that there needs to be some, and it's going to be the feminine. Of course it's going to be the fucking feminine that is like, enough is enough. It can't be safe for some people and not others. If we make this safe, it's safe for everyone.
That safety comes from the subconscious mind, 0 to 6 root chakra healing as well. Like that is the container that we need to navigate through when we are a fucking sponge during those ages. We are picking up the conditioning of our family, of our ancestors, of the world at large. And that is what is steering the ship.
Yeah. And it's deciding to be open and loving and hopeful, not because you're ignorant to those things. You've felt and processed all those things and you're deciding to be hopeful and open and loving anyway. And those are the people who are the ultralight beams in my world. Those are the healers where I'm like, oh my God, it's like they're not strangers. Their head isn't shoved so far up love and light's ass that they don't know what's going on, but they're deciding to be love and light anyway. They're deciding to take it and, bring it back to heal the world, because that's the only thing that will. And the most disgusting people are the ones who need it the most. And so we have to decide. I mean, we have to be discerning to not put ourselves in harm's path, but we also need to be discerning enough to know that if the healing is self-serving, then it's not healing. Like we have to stretch ourselves as healers, even before these people are thinking about stretching themselves at all in any way. We have to be exceptional if we want to do this at all.
Yep. And I mean, fuck. Nailed it. And it's interesting too, just because part of that is also understanding that sometimes like the teachings, they can also be outdated with these new earth codes.
Yeah.
Like they're done. Like the frequency of the planet is continuing to shift, and we need to continue to have teachings that evolve with the evolution of the frequency of this planet.
I feel like there's been a fair amount of work done for the age of Aquarius by people before it, but I do think that most of the paradigm isn't going to work anymore. Like most of the books don't work. Most of the, the basic principles, like as above, so below works, but the shift from 3D to 5D is real. Like it's not just like a meme that like I'm seeing on people's spiritual pages.
And then there's also higher dimensions from that. Like that.
I just learned about that.
That 5D is a trap.
Fuck. I literally just learned there's like so many more. I'm like, wait, like I've been like
12 dimensions. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's all these teachers that are like, love and light, 5D living, cool. 5D is the baseline, but how are you going to continue to accelerate to higher dimensions? Because there's still a lot of that dark energy that can be in these higher dimensions that has to be cleared out to be experienced and embodied.
I think that the end of the victim and predator model is going to speed along a lot of, like, because I think that there's things that we're not even capable of perceiving when we are under the threat of being a victim or we're in the energy of being a predator. And in the current state of affairs, you can only be one. Like, and so I think about it as a successful business owner, I've just turned from a victim into a predator. Like, it's up to me now to transmute that into something completely different than you're either a winner or a loser. And like, it's like that, we're fucked. As long as it's like that system, then we stay down here. There is no access to the higher dimensions, I think.
Right. But that's why, that is essentially my intention for this space. You know, my intention for this podcast is for people to reclaim their sovereignty by having that discernment within themselves of being like, well, this resonates with me and this doesn't anymore. And I'm going to do something to bring more of what feels good and expansive. And when I feel that contradiction, I'm not going to bypass it. I'm going to fucking look at it, address the situation, and do something about it.
Totally. Well, that's why I feel grateful for lives, for podcasts. Like, I don't have time to write another book. The book that I write and finish in 6 months that gets published a year and a half from then and comes out 2 years from now isn't going to be relevant to like what's happening right now. So I feel like it's also kind of dismantling the student teacher dynamic and really opening up the playing field for like, we all need to be talking to each other. We're all getting messages for each other. Like, the point is, like, I think eliminating the hierarchy and really viewing anyone who has the intention of connecting as a possible vessel of source is going to bring us back to like a more cohesive understanding of what's going on, because teachers don't know everything. And I feel like we get like the times where I've been too afraid to ask because I felt like I should already know, or the places where I thought I should be this bitch because I'm a teacher and I'm a reader, like, it's just kept me disconnected. It's kept me out of the loop.
Mm-hmm. So then what do you feel has been the evolution since, you know, you have your Wayhome Tarot, you have your book, What the Fuck is Tarot? Like, what do you feel like is evolving from all of that?
I feel like it was part of like my duty as a soul to create these things. Like, with Wayhome Tarot and with What the Fuck is Tarot, What the Fuck is Tarot was the book I wish I had when I first picked up a tarot deck, written by me 4 years later with 4 years of experience picking up a tarot deck. Wayhome Tarot was this kind of desire to put everything that I understood about the cards into a visual representation. And so it was kind of like, they were both desires to teach and share and tell my story. But what they've done for me personally is they've created, like, I think that books can be a really powerful tool. I think that cards can be a really powerful tool. And I just made my own. Like, so for myself, it's like they're these razor sharp, incredibly precise tools into my own psyche that drag me deeper than any other deck of cards will.
Yeah, I mean, like cards, just, it's been wild to watch like the evolution of like Doreen Virtue and like what's going on with, like, you're seeing more independent creators creating decks. And they are evolving with the times as well. But I mean, there's definitely, you know, the amount of decks that I have, there's a handful that I just don't resonate with anymore either.
Totally. I feel that too.
And so it's okay to make peace with what was, because it helped us back then.
Yes.
And it's also time to align and to work with the tools that resonate with who we are today and who we choose to become.
I mean, the deck that I fell in love with, that like reawakened my like passion for tarot, like I don't use anymore. I don't even know if I have a copy of it like in my house. So, but I remember that moment of finding that deck and opening those cards, and it was probably one of the most important moments I'd ever experienced in my life. So, I mean, thinking about it now, like creating a tarot deck, my sincerest hope and intention for it is that someone has that experience of like opening a deck of cards and like, oh my God, my whole life is about to change. Like, and it's, you know, it's the intention that was put into making them, but it's also what can happen when you find the right thing at the right time with the right intention.
And that's the thing that you also have to trust, is that like, it's all happening for us and not to us. And that like the tools and the medicine comes when we need it.
Absolutely. And sometimes we don't know like why we got spurred into it. Like the deck that I was using, the creator like attacked me on social media, and it was like, it completely destroyed my, like I was heartbroken. And so what I ended up doing, the reason that Wayhome was born was I'm like, fuck you. Like I'm going to make a deck. I'm going to make and use my own deck. Like I'm not going to use this one. And so the intention over the course of 5 years obviously changed. But I think about that. I think about like, when I was in a 12-step program, like the only reason that I got sober is because I thought some guy in the 12-step program was hot. And so I kept going to like see him. And my life happened to be saved in the process, but I wasn't there for that. Like, you know, spirit we don't always need to be perfect all the time for things to be perfect all of the time.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we can just like be easier on ourselves. Like we said, fucking Scorpio, Gemini, like I'm my toughest critic. Like, it's the challenge, you know, but it's understanding that there's a bigger unfoldment happening, and to just like be gentle, do your best, and to share your truth, share your medicine, share your journey, share the icky parts. And I think, you know, again, going back, that the social media world, it's just like people want to show like when they look their best, but it's been really refreshing to see people posting when people cry or when people go through shit. And I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast, they always are so grateful that I've been so vulnerable about the trauma that I've endured and the journey that I've gone through, and me speaking my truth, because people are craving that right now.
Totally. They need reminding, because we've actually convinced ourselves that these social media superheroes aren't people. We actually think that like they don't wake up and like feed their dog and take a shit and like floss or don't floss. Like we don't think that they have things that trigger them throughout the day. And like and as someone who's amassed enough influence on social media to see how I could do that, I could project that, I could be that thing, but it's like you're playing dress up to the void. And the void sees you, like, you know, you're looking back at yourself ultimately. But yeah, I think getting back to a place like we all have vulnerability to offer, because we are all inherently vulnerable beings. Like, so showing it is what's brave. Being vulnerable isn't brave. We're all vulnerable. Being willing to share with other people the ways that you are vulnerable gives them permission to be vulnerable too. And then the world changes. I totally agree.
Imagine what that world's going to really feel like when we have more and more people showing and embodying and expressing.
God. We're doing this for something.
I do feel like that is what the 20s decade is going to be offering.
You know, I'm like walking into my 30s in 2020, like ready to.
I just turned 30 a couple months ago.
Yeah, it's all the same ascension group. I swear to God.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say about our generation, is that like we are the bridge between two millennia. So we're the last two really like what worked from the like the thousands and what's going to be part of the 2000s. Like that's why I feel like so many of us are mystics, and so many of us are doing this ancestral karma work. So many of us are healing the inner child, is because we're the bridge. We truly are the bridge between paradigms.
Yeah, we're the dark night of the soul generation. That's what we're called. And like I feel that. Like I feel it with people having, like, you know, not jumping to have kids, with people going more into, even if it's not healership, into social work, into psychiatry, into psychology, like we are endeavoring to understand ourselves now better and deeper than I think we ever have endeavored collectively. And we will get something out of it because we have technology. Technology can't do it for us, but we have better tools than we've ever had
to work with.
Realize our intention.
Yeah, I was talking to my girlfriend Nixie, who runs I Am Goddess Collective, and we both see this, like, we're getting this tattoo together, but we're going to be getting arrows together, because we feel like the arrow has been pulled back for so long that it's about to get shot forward.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like, we've been pulling back for so long that it's about to get shot forward.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that that's being felt on like a collective scale, because I seriously I feel so tested and so much pressure, but I also keep telling, like, it can't be like this forever. For something, right?
Right? Gotta give, damn it. That's like what I was talking with my best friend Krista yesterday. I was like, something has to give. Like, we've been doing so much fucking work. Something has to give. And we all can choose that we do not consent to this being the reality or the experience any longer than it needs to be.
Totally. And like, that's what I'm saying. Cause I can't be like, stop it right now, but I'm like, please stop ASAP. Like, yeah. I will learn.
Thank you so much for all the wisdom, and thank you for all the guidance. I'm ready for something new. Thank you so much.
But I feel like this has also actually changed my belief that I can only learn through pain and suffering, and that if it hurts, it's working. Like, because that's been my indication for a long time that this is real. Like, I would do a ritual and then get really sick, and I'm like, that worked. And it's like, I needed to change my own mindset of like equating efficacy to abundance and joy and lightness rather than more pain and suffering and work.
Come with ease and grace.
Who would have thunk it? Not me.
Yeah. I'm just really looking forward to see how this continues to evolve. And I'm really looking forward to see how more conversations are being had about that, because, you know, we are so powerful.
Yes.
And our words have power. I mean, they don't call it spelling for nothing, right? Like, becoming really aware of what we're saying. And I do feel like, you know, the throat chakra starts to be formed around the age of Saturn return, and really like speaking in and coming into that truth. And we're saying enough. We're saying no more. We're saying we're willing to see things differently. We're saying, you know, we want to work with spirit to implement great change on this planet. We're all here on divine mission. Help us embody that. Help us be in that space.
And so it is.
And it is so, right? Shit. So I just want to ask a few lightning round questions for you. I can talk with you all day, it feels like, honestly.
You know, I love you so much. I want to come over and do your Kundalini psychedelic experiences.
Let's do it. Okay, question. What does sovereignty mean to you?
Self-mastery.
Amazing. What would you say to a younger little babe who's going through it?
I love you so much. You are so loved, and you are going to be okay.
You hear that, little Bakara? She loves you.
We'll cry about that in a minute.
What would you say was the book that really shifted for you, life for you, and the awareness of who you are?
The Four Agreements. Miguel
Ruiz, yeah.
I read it at the right time. I was 18 years old, and it completely shifted my brain.
Amazing. What is your big vision that you're seeing with the world of mysticism, and, you know, how it's shifting this planet and the collective at large?
I think that mysticism will eventually be the universal foundation upon which the rest of our society and structure stands.
I love that. I'll hold that. Fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something you want to share from your heart out there that whoever's listening needs to hear, right now, what is it that you would share?
That you are capable of being a better, bigger, more graceful, patient, loving person than you ever imagined yourself capable of becoming. The excuses are just noise.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Last two. What animal totem has been really guiding you lately?
Always the moth. The white moth is with me always. It represents my mom, and she's been out in force recently. She just visits me to let me know that she's there.
And you're supported. And where can we find more of you?
Everyday Magic is my spaceship. So shopeverydaymagic.com is the website. It's everyday with 2 underscores magic. The decks and book are all sold there. And then my personal account is Bakara W, but I have no personal life. So there's really not much going on my personal account. And that's that.
Transparency. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation, and I appreciate you more than words could ever suffice. And I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while, and it was just the permission when I asked out, and everyone's like, "Get Bakara." I was like, "Okay."
So right. So easy. Such a joy to spend an hour with you. Oh, more than an hour. Right.
Yes. So go check out all the goods that this powerful mystic has for all of us. Look at how beautiful. They're so beautiful. I just appreciate, look at all of her things. Crushing it. And all the links are in the show notes for you guys to purchase as well and to support her, because I'm all about supporting the boss bitches who are like slaying it out there. And this is definitely one of them. So thank you everyone for tuning in and to listening to our wild conversations. This was just like an everyday conversation I have with all of my soul sisters. So this was just an easy podcast for me. But we adore you all so much. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be catching you soon. Take care.